this is a large growing industry that is a cottage industry, and therefore there is a tremendous amount of opportunity in the years ahead. I'm extremely bullish on the industry and Cognizant's position within the industry. But this is a company that's been undergoing somewhat of a transition over the last 3 years. The good news is that the fruit of our labor is now becoming evident for everybody to see. If you think of the last quarter and the last year, record quarterly revenue, record annual revenue, stock price hit a record high, record headcount. We added 41,000 people last year. And we had our highest growth rate since 2015. And part of what I've been trying to do when I came to Cognizant is to get back into the growth DNA. It required us to tighten our belt and to invest for growth. But now we've had 2 years of bookings growth of 15% plus. Revenue growth is showing up, and we guided to Wall Street in November ongoing growth in the coming years with margin expansion simultaneously. As we're doing all of that, of course, our employees around the world are at the core of everything we're focused on. While we want to be client-centric, we're also employee-centric. 3/4 of our revenue is in North America, but actually almost 80% of our people, our associates around the world, are Indian or of Indian heritage. And what you've seen me actually do in recent years is actually strengthen our position in India. In 2017-18, we hadn't really done a fresher or campus visit. My first year we did 17,000, last year 33,000, this year 50,000, and next year beyond that. So India has always been important to us, but it will continue now to strengthen within that as we globalize the company. And our strategy is very simple, it's very clear. Scale internationally, globalize the company. Secondly, scale into digital, and our digital momentum is growing into 20%. It's now almost 50% of our business versus less than 30 when I joined. That's important because digital is good financially for us. It's good for our associates because they get to work on cutting edge projects and skills. And it's also good because we get to become more intimate with our clients because we work on some of their most strategic projects. The third part of our strategy relates to strengthening our industry capabilities, selling, solutioning, and delivering client outcomes against their pain points versus being a provider of resources. And as we're doing those three things, we're doing a lot around repositioning the brand so people think of us as a international, global provider of digital transformation capabilities. And that's important not just for current and prospective clients, but also important for associates as we're trying to attract talent in a period where there is a war on talent and people tend to have demand-supply economic imbalances. Last but not least, as we're doing all of that, I would say, I'm delighted to say we stayed focused on what we were setting out to achieve. We had a ransomware attack a number of years ago. We had significant leadership changes happening when I was joining. We then had a humanitarian crisis, which impacted us in India about 1 year ago. And today we have an industry that's faced with elevated levels of attrition. But we stayed true to our strategy, to our cause. And on top of that, we advanced meaningfully our position on D&I. We issued our first ESG agenda report. So there's a lot of goodness happening in parallel on top of the financial and commercial momentum we're building. So that's kind of a little perspective in terms of where we are. We still have a lot of more work to do in the coming years, but a huge amount of opportunity, and we're excited about where we're going. Well, we set targets, and these are targets we share with Wall Street. So we set targets that we are comfortable that we will be able to meet, as I have been meeting targets since I've been in the job. And then obviously we'll do everything possible to beat them or exceed them in the years ahead. What we're doing is actually simultaneously, however, driving revenue growth in the double digits as well as margin expansion. And that's a good story. And frankly, in some regards, if you look back over a sustained period of time in IT services, if you're able to do that, normally you create significant shareholder value. And that's one of our clear objectives: invest in our people, invest in our clients, but also make sure that we drive adequate returns. So we're quite comfortable that's been a recipe that's been successful. As I said, our stock hit an all-time high on numerous occasions in the last few months. And every quarter that we make and every time we continue to grow at these accelerated levels and drive margin expansion, we expect that to continue. Growth's coming in a number of areas. First and foremost, in digital. That's one of the reasons we were so focused, Raja, on driving more of our business towards digital. Digital is a high teens, low 20% growth category versus for the non-digital portion, it's 5% or less growth. And so our exposure to almost be 50% digital now, up from less than 30% when I joined, is hugely important for our growth trajectory. With that strengthening of our portfolio has never been stronger. Our position with key partners like Microsoft, Salesforce, AWS are at all-time highs in terms of relevance. Second portion of growth will come from international markets. Take as an example the United Kingdom, which is approximately 10% of Cognizant's revenue. It's our second largest country after only the United States. That country is now growing 20% organically for Cognizant. So as part of our ambition to drive international growth, we strengthened our leadership team in a number of countries, brought in seasoned experts, and they have been highly successful. And with those, then I'm actually doubling down with M&A internationally to facilitate those. So really digital as well as international expansion will be major categories of growth for us. Within digital, it's important to think about trends like cloud, Internet of Things, digital engineering or software product engineering, data and analytics. That tends to be huge drivers of growth, but we tend to take those digital into workflows or use cases by industry, whether it's distributed clinical trials in life sciences, or it could actually be a horizontal use case like marketing cloud. Invariably, that's where we're really trying to put our focus on in digital. I'll give you some examples. Later this week, I will move from India down to Australia. We are growing bookings in Australia 50% plus, 50. Highly successful leadership team down there. We're actually adding acquisitions down there. Last year, we acquired a company called Servian. In Japan, we actually brought a new leader in, the ex-head of Microsoft Japan, or IBM, and HP Japan, and Oracle Japan came in. It's very strong leader with strong heritage, cultural affinity with the market. Obviously speaks the local language, Murakami-san. It's been a very strong region for us. Actually, as recently as 2 weeks ago, I was in the Middle East. I saw 17 clients in the space of 4 days across Bahrain, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. In fact, I think I'm the first Cognizant CEO to ever visit Saudi Arabia. And that has the potential to be a nice growth driver for us. But also in Western Europe, countries like Germany, where we also acquired ESG Mobility, which is an automotive play around autonomous vehicles and electrical vehicles. And the automotive industry is very, very important for us. We simultaneously have done something with Aston Martin as the title partner for the Formula One car. And that enables us to help showcase our digital capabilities around AI and analytics, around mobile edge computing, around Internet of Things. This is a sport that's hugely dependent upon technology, and milliseconds matter. So throughout the world, you'll see us making targeted investments in key verticals like life sciences and healthcare, but also in key geographies like the UK, Germany, Japan, Australia, the Middle East. Well, we're continuing to drive what I would expect exponential growth internationally. So key markets like the UK, we'd expect 20% type growth on an international footprint. That's going to be important for us. In the same vein, we have been actually successful in North America. And this is where numerator, denominator, you don't want your mix to change just because one region is underperforming. You want to do it whilst both regions are doing well. And actually our North America business growth has doubled in the last 2 years as well. And some of that's been because some of our underperforming historical units like financial services, last quarter had its highest growth in constant currency organic in multiple years. Our healthcare business, which again, like financial services, they are our two largest segments and they are predominantly US-centric. Our healthcare business with the TriZetto software product suite has returned to double-digit growth again for the first time in multiple years. In fact, TriZetto as a category, growth rate has doubled each of the last 3 years. So we feel very good about North America as well. So the business will ultimately shift towards international, away from our 75% revenue mix in North America, and we will deploy M&A dollars to facilitate that. But in the same vein, we have a high quality problem because our North American business has accelerated simultaneously. While there is a demand supply imbalance in the industry in terms of skills, and we've been bringing in this year 50,000 freshers, or Gen C as we call them, from universities in India. And in fact, I'll meet leading institutions later today myself, as I have periodically when I'm in India. First point I'll say is they are very digitally native. The skill sets that they have are tremendously advanced. We're actually also doing stuff under Rajesh's leadership with the delivery team, a lot of work around internships these days, something we hadn't historically done. But this year we'll have over 30,000 of the 50,000 that are gone through internships, which means they can hit the ground running faster. But in parallel, it's important not just to attract talent, but also to develop them. Last year, as an example, we invested over 23 million hours in learning and development, and over 130,000 courses, digital courses, were taken by our employees. So as part of an employee value proposition, it's certainly compensation is important today, but also career path trajectory, being part of a successful company that's growing in double digits, and a company that will invest in you and in your career is very important as well. It's an industry thing, and to be honest, Raja, if you look at Infosys results and Wipro results, we're actually in the same range. There are a few outliers that are lower. It's always difficult to understand if some people exclude freshers or people who leave in the first 6 months or trainees or otherwise. We actually include everything. But what we used to show was current quarter annualized, and because the industry has been traditionally showing trailing 12 months, now we show both, which showcases we're more or less in the same zone as Infi or Wipro or others. But really, we've taken a multi-pronged approach to this. First of all, we put a huge amount of effort in place around career path and learning and development, because employees want to work in a company where their career path ambitions can be fulfilled. And as part of that, we overhauled how we think about the promotion process. In Cognizant, we are a job-based or role-based organization, not a tenure-based organization. Historically in Cognizant, promotions were based on tenure. The way we do it these days, it's based on your role. So if you are skilled and capable of taking a more senior role with a higher bill rate, you can get promoted. You don't have to wait until this time next year. So that is goodness, because it creates constant upward mobility in the organization. It also avoids us having to go on the outside market as often as we have historically. And we're able to do that now because we have really started feeding the bottom of the pyramid. And therefore, as you get promoted, Matt Vidden will step up below you and I'll step up below him. You have this notion of constant upward mobility. So that's one thing, plus the learning and development. The second major thing, we've spent a lot of time around hearts and minds, listening to our employees, celebrating success. Personally, I spend multiple times a week what I call a table of five, where I, without a chaperone, without any preparation, spend time with 5 employees somewhere in the organization, and we simply have a conversation. I listen to them, I understand what's on their mind. They get to ask me questions. It's quite an intimate session. And because I am doing that as CEO, now the top 100 people in the company are doing it as well. So we've proliferated that down. But getting back to double-digit growth was a huge factor for our employees, celebrating delivery success. And in the coming quarters, we expect to have some pretty significant wins we will announce. That'll be some of the larger ones that we've had in recent years. And that also is a boost for our employee that this is a company once again back on the attack. And last but not least, certainly important these days, we invested more last year in compensation than at any stage in our history, significantly more, frankly, much more than budgeted at the start of the year because of the labor market dynamics. So it's remuneration, it's hearts and minds, celebrating success, but it's also a lot around career path, learning and development, and optimizing how you show up in front of your employees as part of an employee value proposition. It's very interesting because as part of an employee value proposition in terms of skilling, getting to work with some of the biggest logos in the world, having a potential international relocation, part of our employee proposition that we've been articulating internally in more recent quarters has also been around employee optionality. And I've spent a lot of time with employees here in Chennai today in terms of their desire. Certain employees work on client sites, but for those who aren't on a client site, they have the opportunity now in Cognizant where they have absolute optionality to work from home, to work in an office environment, or to work in a hybrid environment. And what I see for the most part throughout the world is people want more of a hybrid environment where they can work a few days per week in the office and they can work a few days a week from somewhere else. Those office locations, major hubs like Chennai, will be complemented by more satellite type offices in the future. But I'm firmly of the opinion that is very good for Cognizant in terms of our employee value proposition. Also, I had a luncheon today with our female associates, And what I certainly pick up is with this female population, where at a certain stage in life, due to family situations or inability to travel 3 hours a day, 1.5 hours each way, our ability to retain female talent in the company will increase with a hybrid work environment. So the office of the future or work of the future will look very different from the past. I also think, by the way, from a travel point of view, uh, with an ESG agenda, we have a very strong conviction behind ESG these days. Avoiding commute times, avoiding international travel is also something that will be much more contemporary going forward.